here I have an autobiography of Abraham Lincoln, that what does it take, to rise from nothing, absolutely nothing, right, to become one of the greatest leaders in the world. The wooden cabin, no school, a dead mother, a strict father, right? That's how Abraham Lincoln started. No luxury, no contacts, just poverty and pain, right? So can a man with less than 1 year of formal education, become the president of United States? Yes. If he reads, like his life depends on it. Lincoln's used to borrow books from neighbors, right? Walk for mile and sit under candlelight to read. Self-education was his only weapon, and he used it like a sword. Why do people still call him honestable? Because honesty wasn't his strategy, it was his nature. He once walked miles just to return a few cents. He accidentally overcharged someone. His honesty made people trust him long before they voted for him. Okay, so next question is, how many times can a man fail before he is finally called a success? Lincoln failed in business, right? He failed in love, he failed in politics, but every failure became a lesson. He didn't just bounce back, right? He came back stronger, smarter, and more determined. At 45, people called him finished. At 51, he became president. How does a man keep going after losing his first love? He almost didn't. When Rutledge died, Lincoln was broken. Deep depression followed, but he learned to carry the pain, not escape it, right? So that grief carved a deeper understanding of human suffering in him, right? Something every great leader needs. So why did half the country hate him when he was elected? So because he stood for something dangerous, right? Truth. He is openly because he stood for something dangerous, truth, right? He openly opposed slavery in a times when it was a norm in half the country. He wasn't trying to please anyone. Okay, he was trying to do what was right. Why did he back down when the civil war begins, right? Because leadership is not about comfort, it is about conviction, right? Lincoln's believed that the union had to be preserved and slavery had to end, right? If it meant war here, he stood in the fire and faced the consequences. Next question is, what made him finally sign the Emancipation Proclamation? Okay, so here he waited for the right moment. When the Union Army won the Battle of Antietam, he used that momentum to issue the proclamation. It was a political move, yes, but also a deeper moral one. He called it the central act of my administration. Okay, next question is, how did the handle hate, pressure, and wars? With calm, with grace. He wrote letters instead of shouting. He visited hospital, comforted soldiers, right? Took criticisms with humor. Okay, his strength was not in speeches, it was a stillness, right? So why was he assassinated right after winning the war? Because change is dangerous, right? A man named John Wilkes Booth hated what Lincoln stood for, okay, and pulled the trigger. One bullet ended the man, right? But not the moment in death Lincoln became immortal. So next question is here, why is Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln remembered more than any other president? Because he didn't just save a country, he redefined freedom. He turned America from a broken promise into a rising possibility. And what can we learn from him today? That even the weakest voice here, if consistency can echo through centuries, that failures don't define us, response does. That true leadership does not come from power, it comes from purpose, right? Abraham Lincoln didn't wait for the perfect moment here. He created it with nothing but words and will. Okay, and if he could rise from dust to legacy here, so can you. So what is Abraham Lincoln famous for here? Lincoln located in the East Midlands of England, is a city of steeped in rich history and timeless charm. Okay, it's best known for its magnificent Lincoln's Cathedral, once the tallest building in the world, a true masterpiece of Gothic architecture that dominates the skyline and draws visitors from across the globe. Standing beside it is historic Lincoln Castle, okay, built by William the Conqueror in the 11th century, which still houses one of the original copies of Magna Carta, okay, a powerful symbol of democracy. But Lincoln's charms does not end there, right? The city is layered with Roman heritage, including ancient city walls and the famous here Newport Arch, one of the best preserved Roman gates in the UK that is still in use today, right? So as you walk through the quaint cobbled streets like a steep steep hill. Okay, voted Britain's best. Still you are surrounded by medieval buildings, unique boutiques, local cafes, and a tangible sense of the past blending with the present, right? Okay, so this seamless fusion of heritage, culture, and scenic beauty makes Lincoln's a top destinations for history lovers and architects, enthusiasts, and anyone looking to enjoy a peaceful yet fascinating city break in the heart of the UK, right? Who was the taller US president? So standing at an impressive 6 feet, 6 feet 4 inches, 193 centimeter, Abraham Lincoln hold the record as the tallest president in US history. His towering height wasn't just physical. It totally matched the weight of the responsibilities he carried during one of the most turbulent times in America, the Civil War here, right? So his presence was commanding, and in those days his height was especially notable. So when the average male height was much shorter, whether delivering the Gettysburg address or walking among soldiers, okay, Lincoln's figure's legacy and symbolically stood tall for freedom and unity, right? Interestingly, the shortest president was James Madison, who stood just 5 feet 4 inches, 163 centimeter. Okay, a full shorter than Lincoln, and among more recent President Donald Trump comes in close behind Lincoln's at 6 feet 3 inches, that we call 190 centimeter, according to his 219 physical report, right? But while height might turn heads, right, it's the legacy that leaves the real mark, something Lincoln proved with every step he took at 6'4", right? So House divided speeches here, 1858, one of the Abraham Lincoln's earliest and most profound public statements that came in the form of the House divided speech, right, delivered on 16 June 1858, upon accepting here Illinois Republican parties dominating for US Senate. In the speech, Lincoln boldly addressed the growing divide in the nation over the issue of slavery, starting a house divided against itself cannot stand. This was not merely rhetorical, flautist. It was a powerful warning. Here Lincoln predicted that the United States could not endure permanently, half selves and half free. It would have, to become all one things or all the other. The speech set the tone for Lincoln's moral and political stance against the expansion of slavery, and showcased his deep understanding of the constitutional crisis facing the nation, right? So it catapulted him into the national spotlight and established him as a leading voice for unity and justice. So the Lincoln Douglas here debates 1858, right? So later that same year here, Lincoln engaged in a series of 7 debates with Senator Stephen A. Douglas, okay, during their race for the Illinois Senate seat. These debates weren't just political events. They were national spectacles that highlighted critical ideological here differences regarding slavery, states' right here, and the future of the Union, right? So Abraham Lincoln, through the loss of Senate race here, emerged as a powerful orator and moral leader, right? His articulate reasoned arguments against the spirit of slavery and his belief in the principles of the Declaration of the Independence, right? So solidified his national reputation. The debates laid the groundworks for his eventually nomination and election as president of the United States in 1860s, right? Okay, so the presidential here election of 1860, Lincoln's election as the 16th president of the United States in November 1860 was a pivot moment in American history, right? So running as a Republican candidate, he won with a platform that opposed the expansion of slavery into the Western territories. Yeah, okay. His election, however, triggered a severe backlash in the southern states, many of which viewed his presidency as a direct threat to the institution of slavery. As a result, even 7 southern states, seceded from the Union even before Lincoln took office, right? So here, setting the stage of the Civil War here through the nation was on the brink of collapse. Here, Lincoln entered office with a focus on preserving the Union and navigating one of the most dangerous period of U.S. history, right? So the next point is here the Emancipation Proclamation of 1963. Perhaps Lincoln's most transformative and morally significant action was issuance of the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1, 1863. While it did not immediately free all here enslaved individuals, right? It declared that here all slaves in Confederate held terrorists, right? Okay, territories, I mean to say, held territories where to be set free here. It redefined the Civil War, right? Not just a battle for Union preservation, but as a fight for human liberation, human liberty. So this executive order, altered here the moral and political scope, of the war and paved the way for the eventual 13th, amendment, which abolished slavery together, right? It also allowed, African American men to join the Union Army, adding strength and moral clarity, to the war effort, right? The proclamation here, is now seen as the defining moment in African, civil rights history and cornerstone of Lincoln's legacy. The Gettysburg Address 1863, right, delivered on 19th November 1863 at the dedication of soldiers National Cemetery in Gettysburg, right, Pennsylvania. The Gettysburg Address is perhaps Lincoln's most enduring and iconic speech. In just 272 words, Abraham Lincoln honored the fallen soldiers and redefined the American democratic ideal. The reminder the nation that it was founded on the prepositions that all men are created equal, and emphasized the importance of government of peoples, by the people for the people, right? Okay, it was masterclass in brevity, clarity, and moral vision, right? And it helped to heal and inspire the deeply divided nation, right? So this short speech is widely regarded as one of the greatest oration in American history, and continues to be quoted and studied to this day, right? So Abraham Lincoln legacy is not built on just one act or speech, right, but on a lifetime of principle, leadership during a time of unprecedented national crisis, right? From his earliest stand against slavery in the House Divided speech to his eloquent, right, call for unity in the Gettysburg Address, from his courteous to his wartime leadership and groundbreaking Emancipation Proclamation, right? So Lincoln shaped the moral and political future of the United States. His life and words remain timeless reminder that leadership rooted in justice, right, humility and conviction can change the course of history. So Abraham Lincoln's original name was Abraham. Before he became known as Abraham, he was called Abraham, which means here exalted father. The name change was not just a casual detail. It marked a turning point in his spiritual journey. In Genesis 17, God renamed him Abraham, meaning father of many nations, right? As a symbol of the covenant, they entered into, this movement was deeply symbolic. It represented not just a new identity but also a new destiny, right? So Abraham was chosen to be patriarch of a nation through which God would bless the entire world, right? The name change underscore a divine promise and a radical transformation in purpose and calling, right? So here God called Abraham to leave him homeland, right? So one of the most defining moments in Abraham's life was when God called him to leave his homeland, right? You are of the Chaldeans and go to a land he had never seen. This is described in Genesis 12, where God tells Abraham, go from my country, right? Go from my country, your peoples and your father's household to the land I will show you, right? So this wasn't a small decision. Abraham left behind security, familiarity and wealth to step into complete uncertainty, right? Guided only by faith in God's promise. This act of obedience and trust is what makes Abraham a central figure in faith and traditions, right? So Judaism, Christianity and Islam all recognize him as a model of unwavering faith, right? His willingness to follow God into the unknown set the foundation for the fulfillment of God's promise to him. So Abraham was a man of great wealth. So Abraham was not only a spiritual patriarch but also a man of significant material wealth, right? So the Bible notes in Genesis 13 that he had large flocks, herd, and silver gold and many servants, right? So his wealth was a reflection of God's blessings upon his life, but it never overshadowed his commitment to faith and righteousness. What's more compelling is that despite his riches, Abraham remained humble and generous. So he often chose peace over conflict, like when he allowed his nephew Lot to choose the better land during a dispute here among their hard man, right? Abraham's wealth did not define his spiritual words. His faith and action did, right? Abraham and Sarah waited a long time for a child. One of the most emotional and human part of Abraham's story is the long wait. He and Sarah here endured to have a child, right? Though God promised that Abraham would be father of many nations, right? Decades passed here without a single hair. Both Abraham and Sarah grew old, right? So well beyond here childbearing years, and still no child had come. Finally, when Abraham was 100 and Sarah was 90, God fulfilled his promise, and Isaac was born. Genesis 21 in this moment wasn't just a miracle, it was a testimony to faith, patience and power of divine timing. Their long wait serves as a powerful reminder that God's promise may delay but they never fail, right? Abraham almost sacrificed his son Isaac. Okay, perhaps the most dramatic and heart-wrenching event in Abraham's life was when God asked him to sacrifice Isaac, the very son he had waited for so long. So in Genesis 22, Abraham obeyed without hesitations, leading Isaac up Mount Moriah to be sacrificed. And just as Abraham raised the knife here, the angel of the Lord here stopped him, and a ram was provided as a substitute. So this moment is often seen as the ultimate test of faith here, symbolizing complete trust in God. Even when the command seems impossible to understand here, it also prefigures the idea of sacrificial love, and in Christian theology is often seen as a foreshadowing of God sacrificing his own son Jesus Christ, right? So here Abraham's so the conclusion of the point is here, Abraham's life is not just a collection of ancient story. It is a living blueprint of faith, obedience, endurance and divine promise, right? From his name change to his journey into the unknown, right? His immense wealth to his painful waiting and here ultimate test of sacrifice. Abraham's legacy continues to inspire millions across the world, right? His story teaches us that faith often means walking without all answers but trusting the one who leads the way. So yeah, this is all about this autobiography of Abraham Lincoln. So yeah.